I have always been about pushing the boundaries as a social media influencer, and today I'm going to push the boundaries a little bit more. Today I'm going to share with you a story about how I got betrayed by corporate. Now before we get into my story of what happened with me, I'm going to put up a disclaimer to the video that this video can be triggering to some viewers and viewer discretion is advised. Our story begins in January of 2025, where a US based startup reached out to me via email and I was asked to consult their dev team about Shopify's architecture, and I was supposed to be helping them out. Now for the next 2 weeks, I connected with them on a Google Meet call where for 4 hours each day, they were presenting their screen and they were prompting ChatGPT 3 because ChatGPT 3 was the active version then, and they were prompting it in a loop. And they were copying the solution provided by ChatGPT straight up and they were injecting in the code base and they were hoping to make it run. Now 2 weeks go by and I help them out enough so that they get to a good stage and I end my consultancy. The startup offered to compensate me for my hours. I declined the compensation for them and I told them that I usually put out my information for free anyway on my YouTube channel, so I'm not gonna ask for compensation for my consultancy. They were thankful to me and our agreement ended there. Now a week after that, they reached out to me once again, offered me a position as a developer in their company, which I agreed to take. And I got my salary fixed, I got my working hours fixed, and I started working for them full time. Now an important thing to note was, in every call where the CEOs and me were present, they were always talking about giving me equity in the company. I had an incentive to work hard and gain some equity in the company, and they were always talking about growing the company to $100 million valuation and then getting acquired by some big tech giant, which would set us up for our futures. So that was the incentive I had when I was starting my work for the company. Now, a little bit of problem statement needs to be addressed so that you know what my solution was and how it got completely backfired on me. So it was a Shopify app which was installed by multiple merchants, and our app was supposed to be injecting some elements into their storefronts via Shopify theme app extensions. If I simplify the problem a little bit, you can understand it like this. My Shopify app has been installed by eBay, Amazon, and Flipkart. We were supposed to inject some elements into their storefronts, and the basic solution that they were going with was writing all the JavaScript in one file that would manage injecting elements in all of the storefronts. Now, if we inspect the websites of Amazon, eBay, and Flipkart, we will see that they have a different level of div selectors, different JavaScript selectors, and different components running on their web pages, which may or may not block our operations that we were trying to do. Now, the problem with using just one code for every merchant out there was, if there was a bug introduced later in the development for one store, it would break every store in the process. This was something that I was against. So I proposed a solution to them where we would write dedicated JavaScript for each of the merchants that install our app, so that if one merchant's JavaScript theme gets broken, then it doesn't affect the other merchants. They approved the solution and I started working on it. And 2 or 3 months later, I got there. I got the code base to a stable state and I reduced their failure rates, whether it's webhooks, whether it's backend APIs. I optimized all of it. Now 3 months after me working at the startup, their entire dev team left one by one. Due to their personal reasons, they were not fired or whatever, leaving me alone, and I was the only developer working in the company. So I was managing front end, back end, the hosting solutions, the DevOps, the analytics, the billing module, everything. So I was happy working as the only developer in the company. Now a couple months go by and a new developer gets hired into the company. We will call him Max. Max had a decade of front-end engineering experience. And how the company saw me and Max was, I was supposed to be working on the backend modules and I was supposed to be giving him APIs so that he can create frontends which can consume those APIs. Now he started making some front-end components which were using the backend components that I used to give him out as APIs. What I noticed was, he was not calling the APIs that I was giving out to him. Instead, he was copying the whole code of my backend API and duplicating it in his front-end component as is. So I looked at it and I started scratching my head as what's going on here. But I didn't say anything, just left it be, thinking that I will refactor it in the future, which I did. So this continued for some time. Now, what Max did was, he smooth talked his way to the CEO, convincing him that we should have used ChatGPT to begin with, to maintain the merchant's JavaScript files. Now a call happened where the CEO was there, Max was there, and I was there, where they started questioning my approach, which they themselves approved, and they started questioning why I didn't use ChatGPT to get the solution. So I told them that they were wasting so much time with ChatGPT 3 before during my consultation time period that it wasn't feasible for me to use ChatGPT once again to arrive at the solution. And the arguments that I heard was mind-blowing, to say the least. They told me that back then the active version of ChatGPT was version 3 and now we have ChatGPT 5, which is obviously better. That was the first one. The second one that I heard was everything is a higher level context. If I ask a higher level question to ChatGPT, surely it will give me the solution. I wanted to facepalm myself hearing that, but my camera was on in the meet, so I didn't do it. And the third argument that I heard is that Amazon is firing so many engineers because their AI is so good, so it must mean that they are using AI properly and we are not. Let that marinate for a second there. So I told them out of my integrity as a developer that we had wasted so much time on ChatGPT, so it's not feasible to do that again. And this is where the yelling and screaming started to happen. Max and the CEOs, all of them started yelling at me because I should just use ChatGPT because they were so pro AI and they didn't like the fact that I was anti AI. And this is where the first red flag appeared in my head, that Max was able to convince the CEOs that ChatGPT is the end all be all solution, and if I am not using it, then it must mean that there is something wrong with me. So after that yelling and screaming, I just thought, why bother arguing? I just told them that you are free to do whatever you want. I have laid out the architecture that can seamlessly integrate ChatGPT into it if you want it to. So they said okay, and we left the call. Then some weeks later, a deadline arrived, and I was informed that my salary has been cut in half as an incentive for me to work harder, which I didn't think much of. I was able to bottle it in, and I saw that as an opportunity. And I kept working hard and I achieved the deadline. Now keep in mind, while I had a deadline on my head for 1 week, Max was also working on a module, supposedly, which I wasn't hearing what the update was on his part. So then some weeks go by, 2 weeks go by, and I found out that Max was actually out of the office for his eye surgery. Nobody told me that, I just happened to ask, and that's when I knew. So I thought that for the last 3 weeks that he's been out of the office, surely he must have gotten something in his module that I was supposed to take over now, because the CEOs told me that I have to take over Max's work. I look at the pull request and it was only 4 files in the pull request. And it was barely 20 lines of code that he wrote, which to me was another red flag. And I told the CEOs that why is there so much less code submitted by him? They didn't think much about it, and they told me to just continue my work. And this is where the equity conversation started to happen with me. The CEOs were constantly telling me that if I get the company to a profitable state, then they are gonna offer me profit sharing and equity in the company as an incentive for me to work harder. Now the mistake that I made was, I forgot about the 50% pay cut that I just received, and I prioritized my future over my current financial situations. I just thought if I get this company to a good state, then I'm set for life. My future is secured, basically. So I kept working on my stuff, and last month, August, is when I receive an invitation for a call by one of the CEOs. I get on the call thinking this is just another one of those updates calls. So I get told 3 things that shook me to my very core. The first thing that I was told was that I am not communicating enough with the company CEOs, which I found so hilarious because the company CEOs were the ones who were deciding what I was working on and what my deadlines were. And now they are coming back and telling me that they have no idea of what I am working on. So I told them that, and they told me that I should be just more clear with communications. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. The next thing that I heard was Max was now the engineering manager. And I just want you to focus on the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind Max becoming the engineering manager over me, even though he joined 4 months after I was hired in the company, is that he was living in America, the same time zone as the CEOs. Let that marinate for a second there. I was looked over for the engineering manager position because I live in India, and he was selected because he lives in America. That was the reasoning behind it. And the third thing that happened was, I got informed that my salary has been cut down significantly, even though I was offered an increment just a month ago. This shook me to my very core, and I started panicking. And I became desperate, and I told them that from now on, if there is some talk of increment, let that be an increment of equity rather than an increment of salary. Because in a desperate measure, I was trying to secure my future with them, not secure my current financial situations. They actually thanked me for bringing that point up, and they started rambling about how some Google engineers secured their future by securing some equity at an early stage. So after the conversation ended and Max was now the engineering manager, he started asking updates from me on Saturday and Sunday. Both days he pinged me on Slack what the update is, and I had to inform him that I was out of the office, but he didn't care. And on Monday, I received an email from Max where he laid out some ground rules for me. You can see that in the screenshot that I attached. This actually shook me to the core, and I felt sick to my stomach. I was this guy that was dedicated to the company, that I was working on weekends, I was keeping myself awake late nights, and I was working 7 days of the week. I'm attaching my GitHub activity so you can verify that. You will see a lot more contributions in the later half. I went from being this guy that was holding up the entire architecture of the app to now just this guy who's in the company, who cares, we will hire someone else, let's just cut his salary down and look him over for promotions. So I handed my 2 weeks in, I got on a call with them, I ended my tenure there, and here I am now. Now I know that some of you may be worried about my career, and let me clear those questions up. Am I hurt emotionally? Yes, I am. Do I have any clients that I can work with now? Of course. Yeah, I do. This is what the advantages of being a freelancer is. You can just tap into your existing connections and you can find work in no time. Am I going to attach my emotions to a job ever again? No, I'm not gonna make that mistake again. This one job where I thought about securing my future very clearly told me that they don't give a shit about me. And this is a lesson that I will have to carry with me for the rest of my life. This is where I started empathizing with people who lie in their resumes, do whatever they have to do to secure the job, take as much salary as they can from the company's budget. I started empathizing with all of those people. And I know that there is a responsibility for me as an influencer that I should not be encouraging you guys to lie on a resume or draw money as much as you can from the companies. I still disapprove of those practices, but all I can say right now is I understand. So this was my story. So the takeaway for you in my story is never attach your emotions to the job. All you are there for is a transaction. You go in, get your work done, get paid, and then you live your life outside of the office. Never make the mistakes that I made, which is attaching my self-worth and my future to my employer. Because at the end of the day, no one cares about you, and you're gonna have to look out for yourself. That's really about it. See you in the next one.